Hi, welcome to another episode of Thinky Brain, Feely Brain, where I am the Thinky Brain.
And I am the Feely Brain.
Yeah, and we're going to tackle questions we get from readers where we talk about both the cognitive approach and the psychological approach. Of course, I'm the behavioral scientist and Katja is a licensed therapist. But we're both, as Katja reminded me the other day, we're both actually Thinky Brain, which is true.
And we're both also Feely people.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I like to keep that under wraps. Don't tell the internet that, but yeah.
We'll keep it secret.
Yeah, keep it secret. So I got this question from a reader and she wanted to know, a lot of people talk about like go with your gut, and that's kind of confusing to her. And like, is there any actual, like, what does that even mean to go with your gut? And is there any science that actually backs this up as being a strategically smart way to make decisions? Which I thought was a great question. What about you, Katja? Is there science behind it about going with your gut?
Well, there is absolutely science behind the gut brain. And let's start with that. We have a gut brain, and we actually have more fibers running from our gut to the brain than the other way around. So a lot of information is being sent from our gut, from those lower viscera to our brain. And that's really important to remember. So when we look at it from the nervous system perspective, our nervous system has three core tasks to look for cues of safety, danger, and life threat. And your nervous system is doing that whether you want to or not.
So yeah, that's the autonomic system, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you're always getting that information, whether you're conscious of it or not, or whether you want to or not. We do also have a prefrontal cortex. So that part of the brain that makes decisions, that evaluates things, that makes judgments, and so on. So gut brain, really important, and nervous system, we should say, in a larger context, to keep us safe. But we want to be mindful that the information isn't always accurate or helpful. So classic example, walking down a dark street and see a man coming toward you and having a nervous system response, right? So of a fight flight response, a fear response, you feel that in your body. Your gut might be sending signals, and you might feel it in your gut even. So because of social conditioning, that might be a signal of danger, even though there isn't danger. So that's why we also need our prefrontal cortex to evaluate, right? But so if we put this in a business context, for example, let's say you're on a Zoom call with someone and you right away have like a bad feeling in your body, but you don't know why, right? So, but your body, your nervous system is picking up signals. Let's say, I'm making this up, you had a bad experience with someone who had a bunch of diplomas behind them on the wall, and you're on a Zoom call with me and you have a bad feeling. Now, because your nervous system picked this up because of a memory of an experience that you had earlier. So maybe now you're judging me as dangerous, even though I'm hopefully not.
Well, and also to be clear, it's probably like repetitive experiences, right? It's not usually, unless it's an incredibly traumatic experience, like it's Katja, it sounds like what you're talking about is conditioned response, right? So if you've had multiple conversations with people that have lots of diplomas on your wall, or if you have one extremely traumatic experience that registers physically, right? So it creates the sort of stress hormones that register as this is dangerous. To your point, that then you see those cues later on, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I'm in danger again, even when you're not. Yeah, it's the autonomic system is pretty wild. I really wish we would be better at handing out like owner's manuals to people. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. Well, so we have this nervous system, right, that developed a long time ago. And in modern society, we're usually, most of us in civilized countries are not in mortal danger, right? We're usually safe. I say usually because there are some of us that can be in danger or in certain areas, right? But our nervous system can still respond as if we're in mortal danger and then goes into overdrive, right? So knowing that, understanding our reactions and being able to sift through what's helpful, what's not, I agree with you. We need to learn that.
Yeah. And it's hard, I think, because it is very integrative, right? So we've talked about, you've told us about this important nervous system that we have that we often are not told about, right? That is that literal mind-body connection. And that sometimes it causes, incorrect bias. It also might do positive bias too. So you might see certain things as a cue, and it will make you feel at ease in your gut, and it may or may not be a safe situation, but it feels familiar, right? And so this is actually why human beings, sometimes we choose to put ourselves in situations that feel familiar, but are not actually safe.
Absolutely.
But I think when it comes again to a business context, and I think what this reader was asking about, there's two things I want to chat with you about, Katja, about this, in addition to what we've already talked about. But the one is, I do think, just on the classic conditioning tip, I do feel like there are, when you go with your gut after you have had an extended number of observations that allow you to understand situations where there's a high probability of prediction. Now, that's never always the case, right? But for example, and 10,000 hours has been debunked in a bunch of different places. But for example, people have said to me, "Oh, you must be psychic," to which I say, "No." And when they say that, it's usually in context of me being able to clock a person's profession within like 10 to 15 seconds. Like literally, after talking to someone for a few minutes, I can tell you, with them not telling me anything about themselves, I can tell you what industry they're probably in. And it is a combination of observations of how they hold themselves, what they're wearing, what they're talking about, that type of thing. It really kind of freaks people out a little bit sometimes. I am not psychic. I have sat and come alongside probably 300 or more people at this point who are running for office, or who are leaders in the community, extensive interviews where was literally called in to assess and judge, right? And talking to hundreds of people from all different walks of life. And so that number of observation, is it happened over, 15, 20 years, of course, I'm going to already develop these sort of cognitive heuristic methods, right? That's definitely Thinky Brain, like shortcuts, heuristic methods or shortcuts. So I will see certain indicators that make me think there's a high probability that this person is, this person may be an accountant in his professional life. And I'm thinking of a person specifically, like he's an accountant, but I was like, "You're not a typical accountant. You strike me like, do you do theater, or are you a worship leader at your church?" Like, and he was like, "Yeah, actually I'm a musician." I was like, "I knew it." And he was like, "How could you tell?" And it's just a certain way that people kind of hold themselves and engage, right? And so, but I go into all that detail to say, if you have an extensive, like a decade, right, worth of observations, you might have a well-trained set of heuristics that enable you to make good decisions, right? Because you have some sense of predictability. I'm not going to call it causal. People get really touchy about that. But do you know what I mean? Like you have been trained by good data, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that happens overnight. It is
Right.
something that is very tied to experience. And in those cases, making a decision with your gut could make a lot of strategic sense. But I always like to sort of use as much types of evidence as possible, right? So there's your gut reaction, then there's the hard objective evidence, and then there might be subjective evidence. So for example, your gut might tell you this is not a good place for you to be in. It's a business deal, right? And you're like, well, something about it's off. But then you look at the data, right? What are potential sales and revenue and stuff like that? You're looking at a spreadsheet, like this is what's going on, or you're looking at past performance with actual objective empirical data. And then the subjective would be getting references, right, from other people. What are your perceptions of this person, company, whatever? So all those things taken together, I would never say make a decision only with your gut. As a Thinky Brain, I would say listen to what your body is telling you, and also look at those other pieces of data. And then the other thing too, Katja, because you and I have this both in common, our guts are so fascinating, right? Because they are, I've seen it written in lectures too, that our guts, and we're talking about our digestive tract, by the way, y'all, in case you're like, what are they talking about? Like not your stomach, but actually your intestines, your digestive tract. That we both had like health issues, right? And for me, it was chronic fatigue and inflammation, and almost type 2 diabetes, which I squashed. But when I started taking care of eating to help boost my digestive health, that's part of what squashed brain fog, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was your
Well, I
experience?
mean, exactly. So I've dealt with IBS and SIBO. And so if our gut, our digestive system is impacted, we are not producing enough neurotransmitters. For example, we might not produce enough hormones because all of that comes through our nutrition. And if we're not digesting properly because of these issues that we're talking about, or, candida, overgrowth, bacteria, and so on, then that impacts our mood. So hormones impact our mood. People don't really realize that. Neurotransmitters, obviously, like serotonin, impact our mood. So if the gut is impacted, the mood, mind, and so on, brain fog, clarity is impacted. And we forget that we have that connection. It's actually kind of cool because we can address it often nutritionally and with supplements. Versus, let's say, when I had really bad IBS, I was talking to my general care physician, and she said, well, maybe you should see a psychiatrist because I was experiencing
Oh, the same
anxiety,
thing happened to me, Katja.
right?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Insomnia, mood swings. And
yes,
then when I worked with a functional medicine doctor and we addressed those things through nutrition and supplements, a lot of those things went away.
yeah,
And I didn't have to see a psychiatrist.
yes, yeah. This thing happened to me. It drives me. It makes me still a little cranky. Like when we were trying to figure out what was wrong, because I had this collection of symptoms and nobody could really tell, and the general practitioner is actually a nurse. Put my symptoms into the computer, and she said, "Oh, I think you might have bipolar disorder." And I was like, so I've been in cognitive behavioral therapy for a long time. And if that was the case, that would have shown up already, I'm pretty sure. And I walked out of the doctor's office. I was so mad. But then, like you, I went to a functional medicine practitioner. She's a chiropractor, Chinese medicine. She's actually formerly a molecular biologist. So she's a scientist coming into this field. And she helped me make a lot of pretty serious changes to my diet. One of which was, this is not for everyone. And please talk to your healthcare providers. But for me, I took all refined sugar and processed foods to start out of my diet. And now I've been 9 years. I don't eat much form of sugar at all, or gluten or dairy, because they break down into sugar. But my point here is, when we took sugar out, that it dramatically stabilized my mood, right? Because if you talk to any diabetic, they will tell you, they will have stories about how food is mood, but also when your blood sugar crashes, wacky things, and a lot of them unfortunate, will start happening. But it's not bipolar disorder. It's not. And we all benefit probably from therapy if that's something we can do, but there are these other aspects of like stabilizing, understanding blood sugar,
Right.
yeah,
And the gut connection. And so if we
yes,
bring this back to business, again, paying attention to our body, you've made that point too,
yeah.
is so key, right? We live in this disembodied society where reason is supreme, right? I think, therefore I am. We're still dealing with that. And not that thinking is wrong or bad. You're
No,
the
but
thinking mind.
you gotta make the connection there, right? You
Right.
gotta make that mind body
Because
connection.
when
Yeah.
you sit in a meeting and you're having a sensation, a gut reaction, a nervous system reaction, listen to that because it might tell you something that's valuable. And then you can use your amazing brain to figure out what that means. But listen to it because your body is picking up so much more than what's in your conscious awareness. And it's picking that up for a reason, to protect you.
Yeah.
Right? We don't always need that protection, but it's still really valuable to listen to it. And if you have gut issues, digestive and so on, listen to that too, because addressing that to how you just said and I talked about can really make a difference in your well-being, your functioning, and also your ability then to function in work environments.
Yeah, 100%.
Clarity.
Yeah, like stabilize your health because it'll help you make better strategic decisions. But and also, all information is potentially useful, right? So it's sort of taking a very basic evidence-based approach to everything. Just for me, it's always like, and it might seem like a little bit of extra work, but it's worth it, right? So what is your mind telling you? What is your cognition telling you? What is your body telling you? Do they agree? Do they disagree? I will say something too, and this is a little off topic from this question, but is still quite germane, which is, as I recovered from put my chronic illness into remission, what I noticed was my body and my brain started to disagree. And that had never happened before, right? Like, you're laughing, Katja, because you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, That, oh, I can just think my way through this, right?
Yep.
Or the brain is supreme. And what I came to find out was I would go into business related situations and in my personal life, but that my brain would say one thing, usually alerting me to threat, because that's part of what this brain does, right? Again, trying to protect you. But then my body would send a completely different signal, right? And so when they disagree, that's actually an important flag, not a red flag. It's an important flag, right? So why is my mind feeling this way? Why is my body feeling this way?
Right. I get that too. And I get it often in my mind, in my brain, in my mind, I'm getting really excited about something and I want to say yes because I want to do it and I get excited. But my body is saying, you are tired. You need to rest.
Yeah.
You need to say no sometimes. You can't say yes to everything. So there's also that kind of disconnection, right? That I want to do all the things. And the body's saying, you have limits, girl.
Yeah,
Honor
exactly.
them. Otherwise, I'll crash.
Right. Or the other side of it, which is the brain is saying, this is a really bad decision you're about to make. You're about to ruin your life. But for me, the body in a situation, the body was telling me like, oh, I actually feel like the knot in my stomach is untying itself. Right. So, in both cases, though, I think the key takeaway here is, are you learning how to check in with the signals that your gut or your physical body, your somatic wisdom, are you learning the signals to check into that? And then are you checking that against what your mind is saying? And then is there other evidence, objective and subjective, out there that you can gather? And if you can take all of those together, I feel like that's the best strategic position to be in.
So the question our listeners might have is, how do you do that?
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Okay, we have 3 minutes. How
3
do you
minutes.
do
Yeah.
that?
I mean, I would actually make like a really simple chart on a piece of paper. It sounds so basic, but I think it's really important. And I also, maybe we'll talk about this in some other episode, but I'm really a big fan of writing stuff down. I'm trying to go towards like digital ink, because now there are a lot of things you can get where you can actually write. You don't have to have physical paper. But when you write stuff or draw things, you're accessing a different part of your intelligence than when you type things. But in any case, however you need to get at it, without minimizing distractions, I would actually just put like you have 4 buckets, and you could say body says yes, no, right? Mind says yes, no. Evidence, what evidence do you have? Put that there. And then what do people say? And so that's a way of just marking it all down. And so you've got 4 buckets, and you can weight the buckets however you want, right? Like sometimes people's recommendation is neither here nor there, but for me, again, I just feel like the more data and just make it simple. I got this whole idea that started as a joke: minimum viable data. What is the minimum amount of data, pieces of evidence that you need to make a good decision? And so what I'm saying here totally is just like 4 questions. What does my body say? What does my mind say? What does the data say? What do people say?
Yeah, love that. And I would add one other approach to that, and that is sort of, it's actually building on what you're doing. It's just doing it more in the moment, developing a mindfulness practice. And people often get scared, oh my God, I can't meditate for 20 minutes. But all that needs is for a couple of times a day, get still with yourself and check in. What am I noticing? Where am I feeling it? How does my body feel? What do I notice about the quality of my attention, my breathing, my heart rate? And check in with that and go toward the uncomfortable, right? So often we avoid that, but there is good data in the uncomfortable and unpleasant emotions or sensations. So check in with that. What is this teaching me? What does it feel like? And over time, this is a practice, like everything we're talking about. Over time, you become more aware of your body automatically and more in tune with it and learn to read it. And the cool thing about that is that as you learn to read your own body, you learn to read others' bodies and nervous systems. And that is a great skill to have in business.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think also, it's for another episode, but I do want to talk about mirror neurons sometimes, because when you're at ease, just your physical body language, when it's at ease, will potentially set other people at ease.
It's called co-regulation, right?
That's co-regulation. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let's make a podcast about that.
Yeah, we should. Yeah. I have some crazy stories about like the psychology of like body language in meetings, especially contentious ones. But to get back to the reader's question, When does it make sense to go with your gut? It always makes sense to go with your gut, except don't use it only by itself necessarily to make decisions. Look for other data to either confirm or challenge what your gut is saying. Your gut is a very useful tool in decision making, but to not think of it in conflict to all the other tools that you have available, right? And integrating all that stuff is like really powerful.
It is. Couldn't have said it better.
Huh. Yeah.
Thank you, Feely Brain.
No, you're the Feely Brain. Thank you, Feely Brain. Or maybe
sorry.
Well, here's a different way. We could close it by, we're both thanking our Feely Brains and our Thinky Brains, honoring both parts of, who knows if it's on a side of the brain, but they think.
Right.
But yeah.
Body, brain, right?
Yeah.
It's all one.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks, Katja.
Thank you.